Okay, class, in this video we're going to go over Ansible Facts. I'm signed in as my DevOps user and I'm currently in my Ansible working directory. So I'm going to create two files, a fax file for a Linux box and a fax file for a Windows box. And I'm going to get these facts, and I'll explain what facts are, by using the setup module. So I'm just running an ad hoc command and using the setup module. And instead of having my output come to the screen, I'm going to redirect it to a file called fax-rhs2.txt and do the same thing with the MS server. So we see a fax file for a Linux box and a Windows box. So I'm going to run code and open up both of those files. I can supply two arguments to code and open up both files at the same time. Okay, so here's my Red Hat fax file. So you notice all of these things start with Ansible. So if I go down here, you will see Ansible underscore, Ansible underscore, Ansible underscore. So the fax name would be this portion of these names. Also, I want you to make a note that the output that I'm getting is actually a JSON file, JSON file. It's a JSON format. So we can query any of these facts, and they're just variables essentially, predefined variables in our playbooks. So if you wanted to find out what OS a machine had, you can find out what partition a machine has. All this is gathered when we run a playbook. If you notice, there's an implied task called fax gathering. So what we can do is, in that task, that fax gathering task, it gathers all these variables and assigns a value to them. So we can search for one called, this is what the book has you do. I'm going to search for one called FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Right there it is. This is the one the book has you use. We can look for other ones as well. So if I go to the MS and search for it, you notice that the value is slightly different. So I might get more information if I actually get the node name than the fully qualified domain name, because this just has localhost.local domain. Where if I query the host name, I actually get RHS2. If I query node name, I actually get the fully qualified domain name. Here's the OS that I'm on. This is the kernel that I'm using. I can find out who where I'm mounted, what's been mounted. There's all kind of things you can find from these facts. So I'm going to close this out. And you might want to refer to these, because the facts that you have on a Linux box are not going to be identical to the facts that you found in a Windows box. Even a fax referring to the IP address is completely different. So you really can't just assume that it's going to be the same. You really need to get an example of a fax file, look and see what's in it, be able to save it to a text file, search for it. So right here on my Windows box, Here is where I can find out my IP address. There's my IPv4 address. There's my IPv6 address. I can find out what kernel I'm running. I can find out the name of the interface card, the default gateway, the driver for the network card. I can even search by MAC address. If you needed a list of all the MAC addresses for some servers, you can use Ansible to gather that as well. So I'm going to close these two out. And I'm just doing that just so you can see how I got some of these files, some of these variables. So the next thing I'm going to do is I created 3 scripts. Code, lab 3, and again, these are in D2L. Script 2 was for the variable portion of this lab. Script 3 is going to be the first lab for Fax. So I'm going to open this up. So I have a play, one play here. This is my play. This play has one task, and I'm using 2 types of variables. I'm going to pull over Ansible documents. So I'm going to search Ansible documents for variables, and I'm going to do a search of magic. There are some special variables called magic variables where you don't have to set, they're already set for you. The common ones are var host, groups, group names, inventory, underscore host. So I'm going to go back to my lab. So right here, I'm using that magic variable. So as I complete this task, it's going to show this task name and it's going to replace this with the host that I'm dealing with. So if you have multiple hosts, you can use this when you do a loop. So what we're going to do in this play is we're going to use the debug module and we're just going to have it output to our screen this information. I want to find out my fully qualified domain name. And so how I have to do it is, again, you notice that I have this set up as a variable. Anything between the brackets is a variable. And I'm going to put Ansible underscore fax in square brackets. I'm going to put the fax name. So I'm going to open up that other file. This is a Linux box. I'm going to deal with the Linux box first. So I'm going to open up fax.redhat, Red Hat Server 2. And I'm going to do a search of FQDN. And so when I refer to a fax, I don't put the fax Ansible underscore in front of it. I'm just looking for this part. So how I would refer to this is in square brackets. I would put that in single quotes, and I put Ansible Facts in front of it. And then I'm also querying another fax, again in variable format, Ansible Facts, then default IPv4, then address. So I'm going to go back to my fax file. I'm going to look for default underscore. Now this is in JSON format, so this is kind of like a dictionary item. And inside of this dictionary item, there's a bunch of other dictionary items separated by a comma. So if I want this information, how I have to refer to it is Ansible Facts, and in square brackets, default IPv4, then another set of square brackets, address. And that's how I would get to this item inside of this dictionary item. So you have to refer to this first, then this second. So let's look at our fax file. Sorry, let's look at our playbook. So I'm referring to It's an Ansible Facts, default IPv4, then square bracket, address. So this is the item underneath it. I didn't need to do it here because for this one, it wasn't part of the value for that dictionary item. That's the dictionary item. There's nothing underneath it. Where in this particular case, this is my dictionary key, and this is the value for that key. And in that value, I have another dictionary item. This dictionary item, there's the key, there's the value. That is part of the value for this dictionary item. So if you're referring to something inside of something, you need to put it in two levels like this. So I'm going to run this. Just want to repeat one more thing. Again, this is just the debug module, and all it's going to do is display a message on the screen. That greater than symbol, that's what it means. Display it on your screen. I'm going to get rid of D2L, go here, and I'm going to do Ansible Playbook syntax check, lab 3, script 3. I want to make sure I have no typos. No typos. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to execute it now. So you can see that here's my message. My fully qualified domain name is localhost.localdomain. Probably not the best Ansible Facts to query. No name would have been much better to query. And my IP address is 10.0.0.5, and that's correct. And this just means new line. Don't worry about that. So let's look at our second fax file. I'm going to go back to code. I'm going to open my folder, Ansible working. I'm going to grab lab 3 script 4. And I'm just going to go back up here to close. Oh no, this is same code. Okay. Um, Guys, I think it's a little too difficult to read my output down here. So you can do that. You can keep your output here. You can run all the commands here. I'm going to run them on a full-size terminal just so they're easier to read. So I'm going to close this terminal down here. I'm going to collapse my sidebar. So here I have how many plays? 2 plays. 1 play here and 1 play here. This play is going to query Windows boxes, so I needed a new play, or at least a new task. But the fact that I'm querying different hosts, I just made it a new play. So in this play, I'm going to query for the Ansible Facts called known name. I'm going to query for the IPv4 address. And I'm going to do the same thing for my Windows boxes. And to get that same information, I have to query this, and then I'm going to query this. In my JSON file for the Windows box, it's not a sub item in the it's a main item, so I don't need to go under a sub. I don't need to look for a value inside of my value for this key. So this is one key. In this, there's multiple other dictionary items. One of them being this key. So I don't have that on the Windows boxes. So I'm going to go and execute that. And again, I want to point out something else. Because we're not going to do a loop, I want you to watch what happens with this inventory underscore host magic variable. Again, we don't have to set this. It's automatically set for us. So I'm going to open my terminal and execute that. for typos. I don't have any. And now I'm going to execute it. Right here is this task that we don't have to create. It's automatically done for us. It's called fax gathering. Without this, it wouldn't be able to answer any of these questions because this is where it assigns all those variables. So when I looked at my inventory host, this value is set to the last item in that group. So you might not want to use that magic variable if you're referring to a group and you're not doing anything in a loop, because what's happening now is it's only setting it gathered facts for RHS2, it set all the variables, and then it gathered facts on RHS1 and gathered all the variables. And that's where it set that magic variable. So that's why it only shows me the last inventory underscore host value, not the first one. Because remember, this task has to complete before this task can even run. So be careful with those magic variables if you're not doing a loop, if you're applying to a group, because they might change. Now, in this particular case, I am querying S1. Here's my fully qualified node name, and there's my IP address. Let me go back to my play. Now I'm running this against the Linux group, which includes RHS1 and RHS2. So here is my first play. Now I'm starting a new play, which is querying Windows host. Again, the last host that was queried, that's what the value of my inventory underscore host name is set to, that magic variable. This one shows me my fully qualified domain name, my IPv4, and my IPv6 address. If I go back to code and open up my fax file for my Windows box, I'm querying for IP addresses. So I'm going to go back to my fax file for my Windows box, do a Control F, and I'm going to do IP addresses. Sorry, IP underscore addresses. Okay, and this is what I'm being displayed. Let's go. So in this play, I did a gathering facts task. Again, we don't have to create this task, it's automatic. From that, it sets some variables, some facts variables up. And then I use those variables to display this output. But you can also use those variables to do certain logic. Like you can find out if a web server is installed before you enable it and things like that. So after that play is done, each play has its own gathering facts task. So again, so I'm going to do another gathering facts task for those two hosts because in my playbook, I'm querying the Windows group and those are the two computers in that group. And then I'm displaying those values. So let's look at the last playbook that I created, lab3 underscore script 5. So the reason why I'm showing this, I couldn't remember why I created this one. So I'm doing this on RHS1. And let's look at, I'm showing some properties for that machine. So I'm going to execute this. There's really nothing major between this, different between this and the first one. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to first check it for errors. Remember, I have my alias set. So every time I log in, AP is Ansible Playbook, APS is Ansible Playbook with syntax checking. So now I'm just going to do the playbook to execute it. Give me 1 second. I obviously have a typo in this script. Oh, I see what's going on here. I'm trying to show you multiple things in this script. So here we have this fax gathering task that's built in. It's automatic. And that's where it sets these variables. On this particular one, I'm telling my play not to gather the fax. So if I don't gather the fax, I won't be able to use those variables. So you notice that I've added something to this. Fax gathering equals false. I set that variable to false, so it doesn't do that. So if I comment this out and save it, and then rerun it, now it's gathering fax and it'll be able to answer that variable. So I'm going to go back here to my lab, to my playbook, and there's something else that I want to show here. So right now I have one host, so I'm going to make a list as opposed to a group. And then I'm going to add another fax. So I'm going to gather the fax for 1 and 2, and it's going to do this for 1 and 2. But I'm going to show you how, while I'm doing 2, I can query a fax for 1. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to use this magic variable called hostvar. So what this is going to do is, I'm hoping this is going to work. But while I'm doing 2, I want to be able to query the fax for 1. So I'm showing you how to query a fax from another host and another inventory host while you're working on a different one. So we can use that magic variable called host vars, because normally I just say Ansible Facts and then the fax name. And it's going to show me the Ansible Facts for that machine. But what if you want to query another machine in this task where you're working on a different machine? So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back. Guys, in reality, I should check it for errors again. I'm going to execute. So on this RHS2 machine, this is the distribution for RHS1. Also, when I did this, this is the distribution for RHS1. I want to show you what happens if I don't query RHS1. So I'm really looking for this machine, but I want to query one fax from this machine. So if I don't put this here, I'm going to save it, re-execute it. It gives me an error because it can't define that variable. So if I'm going to use this magic variable, see, the book doesn't go too deep into the magic variables, but I kind of want more deeply into it. If I'm using this magic variable and I don't query the host, that means I'm not going to be gathering facts for that host. And if so, then this variable won't be set. So keep in mind that these variables are set in the fax gathering stage. If you're not going to query a machine, you're not going to have any of those variables for that machine set. So it's just something to be aware of. If I can imagine we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with variables. We really need to understand facts because those are predefined variables set when we gather facts, and these magic variables are when to use them. So if you just watch this and didn't go through this portion of it where I use this magic variable host vars, that's fine. I just want to kind of demonstrate how we're going to use these magic variables, how we use these facts, how we use facts um, from a JSON where you have multiple levels you're dealing with. Okay, guys, that's it for this lab. I will record hopefully tonight the secret lab, and that'll be done for lab 3. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.